Welcome in Tilco Advisors. We empower construction material manufacturers with cutting-edge digital solutions. And now, welcome to our podcast, where we share insights from the world of smart construction technologies.
We're going to dive deep into the biggest data gaps that are currently preventing building information modeling, or BIM, from reaching its full, massive potential.
And our focus today is pretty specific. We're looking at the value that's supposed to happen after the initial design phase. I mean, BIM is often celebrated for its 3D geometry, but the real prize, the real value is in the later dimensions.
The later dimensions, right?
4D for scheduling, and critically, 5D for cost management.
Yeah.
And then you have the big one, the operational phase, facility management, or FM. That's the long game.
And it is such a long game. We know, based on some solid studies, that the operational phase is the most financially significant part of a building's entire life. It can cost up to 5 times the initial construction cost over, 25 years?
It's staggering.
It really is. So our mission here is to look at the sources and understand this tragic paradox. The data often exists, but it just breaks down completely. It fails right when it needs to make that jump from design into these high-value cost and operational phases.
That's it, exactly. It's the tragedy of, information overload, but at the same time, data starvation. We've analyzed where the friction is highest, and the cracks start to appear almost immediately after the 3D model is finalized.
So where do we lose the battle first?
Trying to automate the finances.
Okay, let's unpack that. Section 1, the fragmentation trap in 5D cost management. The promise of 5D BIM is this seamless, automated cost estimation that's linked directly to the model. But if you look at the research, interoperability between software has been the #1 complaint in this industry for, it feels like 15 years.
It has been, yeah.
So is the research suggesting that the problem isn't actually the software itself, but maybe that the process of cost estimation is just too manual to ever be fully automated by a model?
That is a very sharp insight, and the sources confirm it's a dual problem. It's technical friction, enabling a process failure. The first major roadblock is still simple interoperability. There's still a highly fragmented link between the tools designers use, like Revit, and the specialized cost estimation software that quantity surveyors have to rely on.
So you build a beautiful model in one place, but you can't get the quantities and the attributes out cleanly.
Not into the cost platform, no. And this requires continuous manual data input to bridge those software gaps. You have people exporting data, messing with it in spreadsheets, and then re-inputting it.
Which completely defeats the point of automation.
It defeats the entire purpose. It introduces time sinks, and critically, it opens the door for human error. The system is still reliant on a person manually connecting the digital dots.
But even with perfect software connectivity, you can't connect fragmented data if the data itself is, garbage. I imagine the quality of the model itself, the level of detail, or LOD, is an even bigger blocker.
It's the granularity problem, and it's a huge driver of friction. This is the level of detail gap. A BIM model very frequently lacks the precise granularity that you need for an accurate quantity takeoff, or QTO.
Which is what the cost estimator lives and breathes by.
Exactly. And a lot of this just comes down to design intent, doesn't it? An architect models a wall at a low LOD because they want to show layout, the aesthetic.
Where the wall goes.
Precisely. But the quantity surveyor, they need to know the exact thickness of the drywall, the insulation, the vapor barrier, all separately to produce a legally accurate cost estimate.
And if the model just has the total wall width,
then someone has to spend hours manually dissecting it, verifying every assembly, calculating quantities by hand, and then entering those numbers into the cost system. That level of manual work just swallows all the efficiency gains BIM ever promised.
So models aren't detailed enough, software doesn't talk. The ultimate fix has to be standardizing the language of the data itself, right? This is where we get into these really high-level concepts like ontology and semantics.
And that brings us to the ontology gap, which is often the most abstract, but you could argue it's the most critical structural flaw. Ontology in this context is just the formalized representation of knowledge. It's a complete standardized framework for organizing cost data so a computer can understand what it's looking at.
Can you give us a concrete example of what happens when that ontology fails?
Sure. Think about it like this. The structural engineer calls a foundation element column C45 in their model. But the cost estimation system, it relies on a different code, maybe something like concrete element 2024-0001.
Computer has no idea those are the same thing.
It has no idea. It cannot inherently connect those two pieces of information. So without a standardized unified language, a shared ontology, the whole automation pipeline just breaks down. It forces human translators right into the middle of the digital exchange.
A communication failure at the machine level.
Absolutely. The research highlights that while new standards like IFC4 are trying to build structures for this, we are still a long way from a complete ontology. It's an evolving field. But without that perfect digital language for cost, we can't truly automate quantification.
It really sounds like 5D is where we lose the short-term battle. We waste time, we waste money on manual workarounds. But if we shift to the building's lifespan, the operations phase, where the cost multiplies by 5, the failure points feel less technical and more about human collapse at handover.
That's the perfect segue into Section 2, handover chaos and data overload in facility management. The second the keys are handed over, the focus shifts, and that's when the information highway often reverts back to a dirt road.
And facility managers suddenly find themselves relying on scattered, non-digital documents. Why is that?
It's the information fragmentation gap in FM. Facility managers are, they're practical people. They rely on what works. Physical binders full of manuals, warranty certificates, drawings, the stuff they can grab quickly. So any new data required for maintenance, say swapping out a pump, often has to be copied by hand from a PDF or a spreadsheet into the FM system. And that manual entry, it just guarantees data loss and rework down the line.
And the irony is they are starved for usable information, but they are drowning in useless data from the construction team.
This is the infamous data overload paradox. Design and construction teams, they're often just complying with a contract, so they hand over massive volumes of BIM data. But the facility managers we see in these case studies, they find that only a tiny fraction of it, often 5% or less, is actually relevant.
5%.
Or less. Unmanaged bulk imports of hundreds of thousands of digital objects, most of which are static walls or furniture that don't need maintenance, just overwhelm the FM systems. They crash the platforms or they make the search functions totally useless.
The research had this specific anecdote that just beautifully illustrates the chaos, the inconsistent naming conventions. Can you walk us through the AHE1 problem?
It's a perfect and frustration story. An owner recounted how they had 4 physically distinct air handling units, 4 separate high-value assets.
And they were all labeled identically.
All labeled as AHU1 in the model and the data export.
4 different AHU1s. That's a nightmare.
It is. And to make it worse, they were tagged with completely meaningless automation codes. So a maintenance ticket comes in for AHU1. The technician has no idea which of the 4 units is failing without physically checking every single one. This simple data inconsistency costs time, introduces error, and completely breaks the digital workflow.
Now, standards organizations have tried to fight this with open standards. We're talking about IFC and COBE. Is the challenge just getting people to fill out the form correctly? Or is the format itself not good enough for modern maintenance systems?
It's mostly an implementation challenge, complicated by a lack of clarity in the exports. COBE provides a structured format, which is good. But the research shows its practical use is just hampered by poor implementation. And IFC, it often generates unclear information when it's exported, so it fails to really articulate the data structures needed.
So the data might be in the model, but getting it out in a way that's immediately useful for a maintenance system, a CMMS, is still a major barrier.
A huge barrier. And the consequence is devastating. In places like Germany and the UK, even when BIM models are mandated during construction, they were frequently abandoned entirely after handover.
Just thrown away.
Thrown away. Because the cost and effort of cleaning the data for FM outweighs any perceived benefit. They just go back to paper and spreadsheets.
Which brings us squarely to Section 3, the human and financial gaps. If the technical problems weren't enough, we find that the human and financial obstacles are often far more formidable.
Oh, they absolutely are. The core issue here is cultural resistance and usability. FM staff have long-standing routines. They know Excel. They know how to read a paper manual. When you face them with a new, complex digital platform, teams are often reluctant to change because the learning curve is too steep. Or, and this is critical, the benefits aren't immediate.
One of the case studies had a staggering number for the adoption period, didn't it?
It did. One owner estimated a 4-year adoption period for a new digital platform, primarily because of the cultural change needed.
4 years!
4 years of sunk cost before you see the full operational benefit. And that delay, It just reinforces leadership skepticism and encourages teams to abandon the new tools.
That's a massive barrier. So what's the antidote to that? How do you win over a field technician who just wants to fix a faulty pump without hunting through 5 different systems?
The answer is in what the studies call the usability antidotes: strategic focus and lean data. The successful case studies, they didn't import everything. They focused only on a specific lean set of critical assets: the chillers, the air handlers, the fire safety equipment.
So we're not aiming for a digital twin of the whole building, just the 5% that really matters.
Precisely. And they paired this focused data with immediate, tangible benefits delivered via mobile workflows. Think QR codes linked directly to asset history. When a technician scans a code on a pump and instantly gets the maintenance manual, the service history, and the work order on their phone, that saves them 20 minutes right there. That immediate, tangible benefit is the strategic wedge that overcomes cultural resistance. It's far more effective than any top-down corporate mandate.
And that brings us to the crucial financial gap. If you can't prove the return, leadership is just going to keep saying no to the investment and that 4-year cultural change.
And this is the ROI quantification gap. Organizations consistently lack the tangible data, the consistent baselines, and the benchmarks they need to measure the true value of these BIM-FM initiatives. This is often made worse by a proprietary software that traps your data, reinforcing the idea that you don't really own it or can't analyze it properly.
So if the ROI gap is the biggest barrier, the solution isn't proving you save $10 million on construction, it's proving you save those 20 minutes a day.
Exactly. The research confirms that the initial measurable win is the strategic necessity. We need concrete, repeatable numbers. A simple metric, like saving 20 minutes per work order, can translate to estimated annual savings of around 35,000 euros for just a single facility.
Just by cutting down search time.
Just by reducing diagnostic and search time. That's a verifiable operational win you can take to leadership.
And beyond the daily efficiency, the sources also suggested that this data clarity can actually help extend the life of incredibly expensive equipment.
It's a huge factor in lifecycle savings. The interview feedback suggested that BIM-driven clarity, which improves preventative maintenance, could help extend the life of major equipment like chillers from, say, 10 years to potentially 15 years.
Wow.
That extra 5 years of service before replacement is a massive financial gain over the asset's total cost of ownership.
You mentioned optimization earlier. For many, the holy grail of maintenance is predictive maintenance, the promise of AI spotting a failure before it happens. Does the clean data we're talking about get us there?
Not yet. And this is another critical insight. For mainstream buildings, predictive maintenance remains largely aspirational, a myth even. It works in highly specialized sectors like aerospace or mining because they have decades of perfectly structured historical data.
So we should ditch the dream of AI running our chillers for now.
I wouldn't say ditch it, but we need to scale back expectations. Most organizations are still struggling to log their current maintenance correctly, let alone prepare the data you'd need to train an AI. We have to walk before we run. The practical reality is a hybrid of reactive and preventive maintenance, built on a foundation of clean, structured BIM data.
This has been an incredibly thorough look. It really confirms that the biggest data gaps challenging BIM are threefold: fragmentation, granularity, and maturity.
That's the summary. First, fragmentation, technical interoperability. Second, a pervasive lack of granularity in model detail. And third, organizational maturity, which covers that cultural resistance and the strategic inability to measure ROI. Success requires addressing the people and the process, not just buying new software.
Which brings us back to data ownership. We mentioned it earlier. Commercial solutions often try to farm out BIM data, trapping it in their proprietary clouds. But the sources highlight that new open source initiatives are rising to meet this challenge.
They are. There's growing momentum around free open source frameworks. For example, there's an initiative called Direwolf, which hooks directly into software like Revit. The whole purpose is to quickly extract any BIM parameter you want and dump it into a standard user-owned database, like PostgreSQL or JSON.
So users can completely bypass the vendor's analytics tools and use dashboards they already own, like Power BI or Grafana.
Exactly. It's a direct response to vendor lock-in. It promises to give organizations back the autonomy they need to do that critical ROI analysis we talked about.
So the challenge for you listening is not just overcoming the technical hurdles, the LOD, the interoperability, but actively claiming ownership of your data and forcing that convergence of standards and practice.
And start small. Be strategic. We have the data to prove that success starts with the frontline technician. What existing processes are you ready to simplify and feed with lean-focused data right now to start delivering that measurable ROI? Because delivering that initial win, saving those 20 minutes per work order, that's the key to unlocking the rest of BIM's multi-dimensional value.
That's it for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed exploring how digital workflows are transforming the construction industry. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more insights into building smarter. Looking for more knowledge and inspiration? Head over to our website. You'll find everything you need to keep building smarter.